Tuesday evening between 18:30 and 19:30 hours as she goes beyond the headlines, giving you the full picture and deeper insights into issues that shape our lives. Beyond the headlines, only on Hot FM, number one for news and entertainment. This is Beyond the Headlines. And now, Kwangu Liwewe.
And a warm welcome to you. We're coming to you live from our studios in Lusaka. My name is Kwangu Liwewe. We're now in the midst of the general election season, and this week we are dissecting the members of parliament, councillors, mayors, adoption process in the ruling Patriotic Front Party. My guest today is the Minister of Justice. He's also the incumbent member of parliament for Kabata constituency and a member of the Patriotic Front Central Committee, Honorable Given Lubinda. Sir, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much indeed.
I'd like to ask you to take off your mask. I mean, we are 2 meters apart, so that at least we'll be able to pick your audio nice and clear.
Very well. Yes, I do realize we're more than 2 meters apart.
Okay.
I didn't realize that. You are safe, I'm safe.
Absolutely.
More than 2 meters apart. Let's do that.
All right.
Thank you.
The nomination day clock is ticking. With less than 3 weeks to go, it's all systems in play for the adoption of members of parliament, mayors and council chairpersons, as well as ward councillors. The ruling Patriotic Front has begun to announce its candidates, and the party's Secretary General Davis Mwila insists that its choices are strictly on merit.
Anyone who has delivered will be adopted. If you have not delivered, you will not be adopted. Because us as a party, we want to win the elections.
But not everyone agrees that the party's process is transparent and that the candidates are selected purely on merit. Transparency International Executive Director Maurice Nyambe claims the adoption process is flawed and leaves much to be desired.
For instance, one of the things that we have noticed, even as TIZ and other civil society organizations, is that there has been the use of money. Others would say the use of illicit money in order to influence decision-making structures within the party towards adopting particular candidates. I think the other key thing that we have seen is that in many respects there has been an ignoring of primary level results, particularly when senior party figures are defeated at primary level. Those particular primary elections, for the most part, have been nullified.
Mbala's constituency's aspiring candidate, Pascal Sokolo, admits that there are cases of money exchanging hands, but he's not fazed by the corruption.
It's very evident that others are giving out cash so they can be adopted. But for me, that's not an issue. We've been on the ground for 4 to 5 years now. We've been making a huge difference within the community, whether it's promoting literacy, including digital literacy. Even during the COVID-19, we were there helping out the most vulnerable groups. And overall, we've been working with lots of groups on the ground. We've done a lot of work with community groups, and that's not in the last 6 months. We've been doing it for the last 4 to 5 years. So our track record is very clear, and hopefully the adoption process takes into account the fact that some of us have been on the ground longer, changing lives, and hopefully it works in our favor.
The key question is inevitably about the caliber of councillors and parliamentarians who are allegedly handpicked.
A flawed adoption process, for example, will lead to the selection of candidates who may not really have the sort of quality, the sort of caliber that it takes to actually function in the positions that they seek. So if it's at parliamentary level, for example, you will have candidates being adopted that may not even have what it takes, for example, to debate effectively on the floor of the House. And so you are adopting candidates that are low in terms of quality simply because they have money on their hands to be able to influence that process.
What is left to be seen is who will make it to the August House and what contribution they'll make in the legislative arm of government. Okay, Honorable, it's great having you on the show. I mean, you bring a wealth of experience in the political realm, having served in Parliament for 20 years, plus you also served in various ministries under different portfolios. Now, for the benefit of our listeners, both here and abroad, Honorable, could you just walk us through the PF adoption process briefly?
Thank you. Before I do that, allow me to join many Zambians and many people of goodwill around the world in wishing KK happy 97. I actually just came back from paying my respects to him and wishing him happy 97th birthday, and I'm delighted that he kindly bestowed his blessings upon me. So happy 97th birthday, founding father of the nation, great statesman of Africa, and great international statesman.
That is awesome.
Especially that we're talking about politics, I think that it's befitting that this day you're talking to me about how adoptions are made in the Patriotic Front, how people get to become elected, to be representatives of the people, which is something that has always been dear to the heart of Dr. Kenneth David Uchizwa Kaunda. And second, let me thank you most sincerely for inviting me to this program. I take it as a great honor. The process in the Patriotic Front for adopting of candidates is provided for in the Patriotic Front Constitution. And this provides that for the adoption of those who want to aspire as councillors, the adoption process starts with the wards. From the wards come the constituencies, the constituency committees, and finally the district committees, and finally the provincial committee is the one that adopts. After having looked at the recommendations that are made from the district and constituency and ward committees, for those who aspire for election to the National Assembly, it goes on from the constituency, through the district, through the province, and finally at the Central Committee.
Okay.
The Central Committee is the only body that is mandated to adopt candidates for Parliament. And it is also the only body that is mandated to adopt candidates for mayor or chairperson positions in various councils. Now, how is this done? This is done by all those who aspire, registering their interests to the various organs of the party after the Secretary General of the party announces that now the time is ready for receiving applications. As the case may be now, when the Secretary General announced way back in October, November of 2020, people started making applications.
Okay.
And if you recall, he made announcements for applications initially in 3 provinces: Southern Province, Western Province, and Northwestern Province.
Okay.
The 3 provinces got on the road of the process, and they made applications. For those who are standing as councillors, they made applications to the wards and made copies to the constituencies, the districts, and the provinces. For those who are aspiring for Parliament, they made applications to the constituency, copies to the district and the province, and to the Secretariat, to the Secretary General. The process is now ongoing.
Okay.
As you are already aware, 2 weeks ago, we sat as Central Committee and looked at the recommendations that were made by the structures in Western Province up to the Provincial Committee, and we ended up selecting candidates for Parliament as well as for Council Chairpersons for Western Province.
All right. Okay, now it's interesting that you've explained this whole scenario and you've said that the Central Committee is the one that's mandated to choose, because I know there have been a lot of questions and some arguing that, why is it not the first tier, that's at the constituency level, when we're talking about adopting members of parliament, who make that decision, because they believe that people at the constituency level, they're the ones on the ground, and they know what the people want, and they know the will of the people. So why would you say, why have you opted for the MCC to be the one to adopt the MPs?
There are several reasons. One is that if we left it only to constituencies, we would not have the opportunity to look at the balance across the whole country. We would end up with only one gender. If we were to say, let the constituencies determine who the candidates will be, there would not be any process through which we would decide that we should also balance gender, we should balance age. They would end up with only one gender or end up with only the same age group. We require a superior body that will look at all the recommendations across the country, and the Central Committee would be able to decide that there are so many males and so many females, and let's balance this.
Okay.
Secondly, as you are quite well aware, the constituency committees are limited in the scope of scrutiny of the candidates. The district committees are expected to understand much more of the district than the constituency would understand. The constituency would be limited to understanding only within the confines of their constituency. The district committee is the one that would understand the confines around the district, and so it goes on up to the central committee. The central committee is the one that will understand things from a national perspective. We also ought to be very clear that we have the National Security Committee of the party, and the National Security Committee of the party is a committee of the Central Committee, and this is the committee that also looks at the security record of the various players in the political party. That committee has presence at the constituency level, but the information is filtered without necessarily informing the constituency committee per se. It is filtered through to the National Chairperson for Security, who gives a report to the Central Committee. You can imagine what would happen if the National Security Report was to be given to constituencies and filtered through the district committees and the provincial committee. It would be compromised. So because of that, we also have to ensure that the Central Committee is given the latitude to be the one that makes the last call on who stands as Member of Parliament. For councillors, we have confidence that the provincial committees have sufficient capacity to assess the candidates who apply for council positions.
Okay, so if you listen to that package that we played at the beginning, the number one bone of contention was alleged corruption and bribery at all levels of this process. That is a constituency, district, and provincial. I'm talking about especially for members of parliament adoption. To quote one of the aspiring candidates, he said it's a highly corrupt process. And the whole of last week and this week, I've been speaking to members of people who are aspiring, and most of them chose to speak off the record, obviously for fear that, if they speak out, they may not be adopted. So how do you respond to these allegations of gross corruption and bribery in this process?
Fortunately for me, I have no fears of any kind of reprisal or any kind of reprimand. And as you are well aware, and as your listeners are aware, I always find it difficult to mince my words. And in the avoidance of doubt, I want to say that all these systems are vulnerable to corrupt practices. There's no question about it. All these systems are vulnerable to corrupt practices. Sitting as a member of the Central Committee of the party, and one who has served as member of the Central Committee for more than 14 years, I have to say that the reports of corrupt practices this year have exceeded all the reports that I've heard about in the past. It is beyond question that there are some people who have engaged themselves in what, in my view, is less than honorable practice. That's no doubt. I have heard of these reports. I have heard of people who are using money to influence systems. I've heard of people who are quarantining the electorates at constituency level, at district level. I've heard about these reports. And these have been more rampant this time around than ever before. Now, unfortunately for me, this is a reflection of what our society is becoming.
Okay.
And I have to say this with, if you like, defeat in my heart, that my dear country is getting to these levels where people think that for them to get anything, they must use money. I was privileged to have been assigned the responsibility, the onerous responsibility of writing the guidelines, the adoption guidelines for the Patriotic Front. And I sat with colleagues and we analyzed this. And all of us agreed that we ought to come up with strict regulations that will curb the incidences of influence peddling and corruption. Because in our view, the committee's view and the Central Committee's view, if a person ascends to a position where they are elected through corrupt means, then you create a danger for society, because then you're going to have a government that is led by corrupt people.
If I get you correctly, have you come up with that document and is it being implemented?
We have come up with guidelines, and those guidelines are being followed. And fortunately, they are curtailing, in many respects, they are curtailing the incidences of corrupt practices. So I have to say, yes, we have heard of incidences where people are using money. There's no hiding the fact that people are peddling their influence. There's no question of the fact that people are name dropping. There are some people who are going out in the constituencies and saying, I'm the preferred candidate, preferred by the president. The president sent me here. The president is the one who appointed me to come into this constituency. The vice president is the one who blessed me. The secretary general blessed me. There's no hiding. There are some people who have done that. But after we issued those guidelines, fortunately we have seen that there's been a decline in such occurrences. There's been incidences where people have been going around displaying campaign materials and showing themselves as the preferred candidate. After the Central Committee issued those guidelines, we have seen that people have withdrawn those campaign materials.
Okay, maybe just run us through some of these guidelines.
Number one is that there is no use of money. Whoever goes out and uses money to influence the decisions of the various sections, the various levels of the party, will be disqualified. No use of money. Secondly, no influence peddling. This is the reason why the Secretary General of the party, you may recall, he announced that any office holder in the Patriotic Front who aspires to contest elections, either as councillor or as member of parliament or as chairperson of a district, should relinquish their position, so that they don't go out and use their party position to influence the decisions of the structure of the party. The third is no name dropping. Whoever goes out and says, I've been sent here by such and such a member of the Central Committee or the president or the vice president, will be disqualified. Any person who engages in individual empowerment programs during this period shall be disqualified.
Just elaborate on that.
A person who goes around and says, you know, I'm such a good man and I'm standing in Kabwata, given Lubinda, and I've come here, I'm going to build a market for you. Now, during the process of adoption, is not allowed. That person will be disqualified. Because obviously you're doing that to try and entice people to support you. And where were you all this time? How come you're coming now? The other one is engagement in public campaigns. We have not adopted candidates yet. And therefore, whoever goes out, if a person was to come to this radio station and says, I am the best placed person to be member of parliament for Chimutengo constituency, before they are adopted, what are they trying to do? They're trying to play on the minds of the institution of the PF. They are not allowed to do that. They can only do that after they have been adopted. So whoever engages in such a practice shall be disqualified.
Okay.
Another one is having proxy campaigners. We heard of some constituencies where the constituency committee, the chairman of the constituency, is actually the campaign manager of one of the candidates. And once that is discovered, that candidate is disqualified. Because we want to give the Zambian people a fair ground on which they will select, first of all, our candidates, and secondly, their parliamentarians and their councillors. The last one that comes to my mind is disparaging the incumbent members of parliament or councillors.
Okay.
You can't go out and start saying, the member of parliament for Chimutunzi constituency, who is PF member of parliament, has failed lamentably. I will come and do better than this fellow.
Or I'm not scared of so-and-so.
Or I'm not scared of this fellow, he's just useless. I mean, this is an in-house process. So keep it in-house. You don't take it outside.
When did these guidelines come into effect? Because some of these things you're saying, you know, as close as last week we were hearing these things.
Well, if you've been hearing about them, you're hearing them from people who don't want to be adopted.
Okay.
You're hearing them from people who want to disqualify themselves. These guidelines were issued by the party, if I recall now, in February.
All right.
The Central Committee meeting that was held in February is the one that adopted these guidelines. And after that, a number of members of the Central Committee were assigned to go to various provinces. I was assigned to go to Northern Province. I went to Kasama, where I went to present these guidelines, and my colleagues went to other parts of the country. And we had meetings where we briefed provincial committees, district committees, constituency committees on these guidelines.
Okay.
And we said these are the guidelines that all of us who are aspiring to be adopted should abide by. So whoever goes against these guidelines is qualifying themselves for disqualification.
Okay, and regardless of whatever position they hold. And here, making reference, of course, to we have the minister in charge of presidential affairs being quoted today in one of the dailies. Tell people to stop begging if you want us to stop giving out money. And then the other day, there was a video of the vice president also that went viral of her dishing out money. How do you respond to this? I know they may or may not be vying for adoption, but I mean, what message is this sending out to the public?
You know, when I first saw the video, and let me talk about the vice president first before I talk about my friend Sikazwe. When I saw the video of the vice president, first I couldn't believe my eyes. I literally had to rub my eyes hard, and I watched the video over and over again. And I called some of the people who were in the company of the vice president, because I didn't believe it. And I'm very happy to inform you that I was later on informed that Her Honor the Vice President was doing what we all do, what all politicians do. To Sowela, it's called Sowela in Nyanja.
Okay.
People went to her meeting and they were singing and dancing and so on. And she went to give to them to appreciate their music. Unfortunately, they did not want to receive as groups.
Okay.
They broke loose and they wanted to receive as individuals. And that's how come they besieged upon her. And that's why you saw that rowdy crowd going towards her. So it is not as though she herself had predetermined that I'm going to give money to individuals.
Okay.
She was giving to groups who were singing. All of us politicians do that. When you go to a meeting and there are people singing for you, you go and put a little bit of money on their chitenge. They normally you spread chitenge for you to go and put a little bit of money for appreciating them. We do this even when you go to any function and there is a group, a traditional group that's performing, you go and put a little bit of money. We do it also in concerts. When there is a musician playing and you like their music, you go to the stage and throw a little bit of money, purely to appreciate their art. And that was the circumstance in which she did that. Unfortunately, they broke loose and they went as individuals. That's the reason why you saw her as though she was giving money to individuals. That wasn't her intention. She was giving to groups. You may have also noticed that in the end, her security people had to break the crowd, because that wasn't pre-planned. Had it been pre-planned, obviously, they would have made those people queue up. And I have to say to you that we in the Patriotic Front have been talking about this a great deal.
Yes.
I myself have said this many a time. I was quoted not too long ago as having said, yes, I don't mind people calling me a penguin, and I'd rather be called a penguin than be a buyer of votes. And this is the stand that most of us, I won't say all of us, because I can't speak for everybody in the party, but I can say most of us in the leadership of the Patriotic Front are against the practice of going out and giving money to people through windows and making it appear as though that is the way we're going to support people. We are against giving alms. If you look at our party manifesto, it tells you very clearly that we actually loathe the idea of giving alms to people. So when my friend, and now we're moving from the Vice President to Minister of Presidential Affairs, Sikazwe, when he says, stop begging, so that we stop giving. That, in a way, is a fair statement. All right? It's a fair statement. There are some people who can't resist. When somebody comes begging, you can't resist. There are also others who just can't stand the idea of people coming to you begging through the window of your car.
So are you saying when you go to these meetings, the constituents are always asking for money?
Oh, dear me. And this is something that people like you and me should work on, using platforms such as this. Let us talk to our people. Where is that respect, the personal respect, the human respect? I was raised in a family where, when we didn't have salt, even to just think of going to the neighbor to go and ask for salt was an embarrassment. That's how I was raised. We chose to have a meal without salt rather than reducing ourselves to a level of beggars to go to our neighbor and say, today we have no salt, please give us salt. When we didn't have, we decided we shall stay without. This is how I raise my children. When you don't have, keep it to yourselves until you have. To go out to the public and beg is dehumanizing. This is something that we have lost as a country. Now it appears to me that people really enjoy it. It is a pleasure.
So why not just, for lack of a better term, turn at them and not give them? Maybe it'll stop them from begging. But they know they ask for alms, they'll be given alms.
When I said, and I was quoted in one of the newspapers, when I said, I am happy to be called a penguin because I don't want to give alms, it's because of that. And you and me and everybody in positions to give, if we said no, they will not ask. The fact that we give, they will continue to ask. Let me ask you a question. Kwangu, growing up on the Copper Belt, how many people did you see on the street, roaming the street with a begging bowl? Almost none.
Yeah.
Here in Lusaka, almost none, because nobody was willing to give. Now, unfortunately, there are some of us who think when people run after you, you're driving in your car and people run after you, hey! Huh? Boma, Boma, and that's what they say to me. Whenever they see my car, Boma, Tayuma, Bwana, Tayuma, Tayuma, Bwana, salute Bwana, Tuswemo Bwana. This has become something that people really cherish. And then I go into my pocket and give them 20 kwacha, give them 50 kwacha. What am I doing? What am I doing? First of all, I am using money which I should use productively. I'm using it unproductively. Because those fellows have given 50 kwacha, 100 kwacha, 200 kwacha. What are they going to use it for? Are you sure they would take their child to school? 50 kwacha, 100 kwacha? Of course not. Are you sure they'll go and buy a bag of mini meal? Maybe not.
But Honorable, you have said that, there's a good number of you in the PF who are against this, but there are those who actually do it. Why are they not being castigated? Why are you not calling them out and reprimanding them?
I said to you that I can speak for most, but I cannot speak for all. That I cannot do. I can speak for most. I cannot speak for all. Because truth be told, there are some who have literally confronted and said, this behavior is alien to the Patriotic Front. Totally alien. I've said this before and I don't mince my words. I've said it in meetings, I've said it in public, that there are some who are given to this idea that they are going to endear themselves. They'll become very popular by carrying a suitcase of 20 kwachas in the car, and wherever they stop, they give out 20 kwacha and they think they're going to be popular. There are some like that. There are some like that in my party, unfortunately. There are some like that in other parties. And my message to all Zambians is stop it. Please stop it. If I give out, can you imagine, at my house every single morning, as I leave my house to go for work, there are at least 10 people waiting. And they come with all sorts of problems. Some of them come to me and they say, Neribe unga kunyumba. Others come to me and say, Neribe ndalama for Mankwala for my daughter to go to the hospital. I have no school fees. I have no this and I have no that. And if I was to be able to afford to give to all of them, then the question will be, who is financing this?
Exactly.
Who is financing?
So what you do, you turn them away?
I don't turn them away by just saying, get out. I say to them, please, this is not the role of your member of parliament. For you, who as a child, who has to go to hospital and you can't afford, this is where to go. Go to this ministry, go and speak to them. For you whose child has been thrown out of school, go to my office, they will do a letter for you, you go to the right ministry, go and speak to them. Because it is not me, it is the institution that should support such people. It is not the individual. Unfortunately, over the time, we have turned offices of members of parliament to be social service providers, which they are not. Now, whose duty is it to change that? It is not necessarily for the individual member of parliament. The reason why sometimes people castigate me, and they, I'll tell you a story. Give me just 2-3 minutes.
Okay.
Here at Long Acres, I used to come here, I used to bank at Long Acres Barclays. I since stopped. Because every time I came here, cadres would run after me, would run out of the car. And when I jump out of the car, I tell them, sorry guys, I don't have money to give. I've actually come to plead with the bank that they must not charge me because I have a loan in the bank. I have not serviced my loan. The next time they see me, they come running and I say the same story. Please, I have no money to give you. Eventually, one day I drove to Long Acres. They came running after me. When I jumped out, they all just said, Nichi Lubinda. And they all went away. And they even said, I felt pricked in my heart. I felt pricked in my heart. Why is it that people are being made to believe that members of parliament, that ministers have money, they are carrying suitcases in their boots? Because it's not true. We don't carry suitcases of money in our boots. But this will take all of us to change that mindset. And I'm praying to God that all of us get involved in this. Because, these street children that you see on the streets, if you look at the party manifesto, we're saying we must make sure that no child is raised on the street. Because it is dehumanizing for anyone to be raised on the street.
Okay.
Now, how will we manage to remove the children on the street if, on the other hand, when we drive and we stop at the traffic lights, we're giving them alms? Will they leave the street? No. Because they will think this is where we can get money.
Okay. All right, let's just move on now. I'm taking you back to the adoption process. We heard in the package that played where the Secretary General was talking about, if you haven't worked hard or you haven't done anything in your constituency, that you wouldn't be adopted this time around. And we've heard this term used, popular candidate, all the time. I've heard it several times being used by the Central Committee. When you say popular candidate, what exactly do you mean? Popular to who?
Popular to the populace.
Okay.
Yes, popular to the populace. How does one become popular? Number one, it must be a person who is known by the people in that constituency. How does a person become known to the people in the constituency? It is built over a long period of time. You can't just go in 2 days, 3 days and go and have a show. You have a music show and you go and stand there and say, I have come. I'm Gideon Lubinda. I've been living in the United States of America all these years, and now because the elections are next year, I've come. I'm now popular. That's not being popular. You may be.
Are you
famous.
ruling out people from the diaspora then?
I'm not ruling out people from the diaspora, not at all. There are people from the diaspora who frequent their constituencies over a long period of time. They endear themselves to the people. They understand the constituency. Those are the people who become popular. People must distinguish between being famous and being popular. Okay. I could be extremely famous, but not popular at all. Famous because I do things that people love. But when it comes to popularity, it's a different matter. So when the Secretary General says we're going to adopt people who are popular, he is saying people who have endeared themselves to the people. People who, when we say this is our candidate, people not start asking, where is this person from? When did this person come into our constituency? What has he done for the constituency? No. They will say, yes, we know this person. This person has been in the constituency with us. This person has been seen. This person has been working with us. This person has been living with us. This person is popular. This is the person we can associate with. This is one like us. Remember that in a democracy, in a representative democracy, people elect one who they think is like them. People don't elect a person who they think is higher than them or lower than them. They always elect a person who is like them. That's what representative democracy is. Now, how do people get to know that you are like them unless they live with you? Unless they have interacted with you? And not only for 2 days, but they've interacted with you over a long period.
But there are complaints that those popular ones, in the end, don't get adopted when it reaches the third tier.
Well, this is very subjective. Very, very subjective. There are some people who indeed could be very popular on the ground, but the information that filters through the structure of the party leads to these decisions against them. For instance, a person could be considered extremely popular on the ground, extremely popular, but then information filtering through from the National Security Wing points to the fact that this person may have been engaged in some criminal activity somewhere, and adopting them will be putting ourselves at a risk. What do we do? That person will not be adopted. And as a party, would not go out and say, we have not adopted Gideon Lubinda because we know that he has a criminal record, because we don't want to dent the image of that person. So the party would say, yes, this person is popular, however, because of this record, let's not adopt them. There are others who could appear to be extremely popular on the ground, but are not supported by the party structures because either they are very new in the party, they may have done a lot of work on the ground, but they're doing the work using a different political party. And because they're not adopted by their political party, they come to our political party and they say, I want to be adopted. Such a person, yes, is popular on the ground, but doesn't have support within the party structures. If you adopted such a person, you'd have the challenge of not having support of the party structures in the campaign.
Okay.
So these are the various permutations that we look at before we adopt candidates.
Okay. Moving on, before I open the line, and for those listening, the number to call us on is 0974-870877. That's 0974-870877. Now, let's talk about, you're smiling at me, Kabwata, and the succession battle there. What's your view on that? Do you have any favorites?
No, I don't.
Okay.
All of them are my favorites.
All right.
And there are 4 of them, and how many have come to me? Some have come to me. Let me not embarrass anyone. Some have come to me, and I've blessed them.
So you're going to bless, okay. You said there are 4, some have come.
Some have come to me, and I've blessed them.
Okay.
And I've said to them, I wish you God.
So may the best man or woman win.
May the one who is preferred by the people and by the Central Committee be adopted.
Okay.
And once they're adopted, they have my total support.
All right. That's one to watch. So, yeah, it appears to be a vicious cycle here, because you could have a half-baked candidate, right? And he's adopted for some reason. He wins the election, then goes to Parliament. How can they possibly articulate issues and debate in Parliament? You've served in Parliament for a long time, and I know you have seen some deadwood in Parliament. What's your comment on this?
That's a very important question. And it's not only for Kabwata, this is for the whole country. And for us in the Patriotic Front, that's another consideration. We are not only looking at persons as persons, we're looking at ability. So back to the issue of popularity. A person could be extremely popular on the ground, but if we have information that this person shall not articulate issues to the extent that we expect, then we say, sorry, let's pick somebody else who will come and articulate.
But I'm sure it has happened in the past.
It has happened in the past, there's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And having been in Parliament as long as I've been, I can say to you that there are some parliamentarians who, when they stand up to debate, I say to myself, good heavens, what were the people thinking about when they elected Gideon Lubinda to come to Parliament? Because for all intents and purposes, he has taken away a space which could have been utilized by somebody else. I've come to this conclusion.
Okay.
This happens. But you see, this again is a question of the challenges of representative democracy. That's the challenge. That some people can go through the whole process of adoption and present themselves as the most articulate. But you know, parliamentary business is not easy business. And this I want to say very clearly.
Okay.
Parliamentary business is not easy business. I've seen people thinking, because he has made it, I can also make it. The day you enter into Parliament as a parliamentarian and you're told, come and now take oath to Mr. Speaker, then you start to realize things have started. And when debate ensues, some people spend 3 years, 3 long years, wondering, what is it that I'm doing here? When debate is ensuing, they get so terribly confused, the only thing they can do is stare in the roof and look at the lights and count how many lights there are. When you meet them at tea, you ask them, we're waiting to hear your maiden speech, and they say, I'm still composing myself. 3 long years.
But as a party, what are you doing to make sure that, come post-August this year, your crop in Parliament will be top-notch?
Fortunately for the Patriotic Front, even in the current Parliament, there are a few young Turks who took maybe 1 year and after that they managed to get up and run. In the other parties, I don't know. That's where they were 3 years, 4 years. There are some people who spoke only once. Parliament is coming to dissolve now. If you ask me privately, I'll tell you their names. Already, I don't want to be sued.
Off the record.
Off the record, I'll tell you. But here I can't tell you. But there's some people who, from the time they were elected, they only spoke once, and Parliament is going to be dissolved.
So you're saying that all the PF representatives have spoken and spoken adequately.
Oh, the PF fellows have been very good, and the reason.
You would say that, Honorable.
But I can tell you, you can ask Cornelius Mwetwa. And I'm making reference to Cornelius Mwetwa because all of a sudden he has found a lot of talk time. And Cornelius, the reason I can talk about Cornelius Mwetwa is that Gideon Lubinda is the one who introduced him to politics. I'm even the one who paid for his adoption fee in 2006. I paid his adoption fee, so he can't sue me. He's my young man. I've taught him politics. I like him very much, but lately he has found a lot of talk time. He's talking a lot. That's why I can refer to him. Talk to Cornelius Mwetwa. He will tell you he will say, yes, PF MPs speak. There could be one or two who, when they stand up to speak, all of us enjoy it because they are off tangent, but they speak. Unlike their party where there are some people who have only spoken once. And Cornelius Mweto, privately, will tell you that he was talking about this particular one.
I'm sure they'll hit back at you next week because I have them on the show talking about their adoption.
Yes,
so we'll hear what they have to say about the Patriotic Front. Okay, to the listeners, if you want to call in and ask Honorable a question or make a comment, the number to call us is 0974-870877.
Beyond the headlines. Stay tuned.
Hello, good evening. Hello, good evening.
Hello, good evening. Hello, good evening.
Yes, who am I speaking to?
This is Kaluba. Good evening.
Hi, Kaluba. Go ahead with your question or your contribution, please.
I just want to contribute on what the Honorable Minister has said with regards to the mentality that the country has just gotten into of begging from politicians and the politicians dishing out money.
Yes.
The biggest question which everybody has as a Zambian is where do the politicians get money? Because we know their salaries don't really amount to what they do or their activities in terms of giving out and issuing money the way they're doing it. And the mentality that the Zambian people are having right now of if you say politician, you think they're going to give you money. I think it's a bad thing. It's a very bad thing which if every politician was to take Honorable Lubinda's stance of not dishing out money anyhow, I think this mentality needs to come to a stop somehow. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Kaluba. Let's see if we have another caller. We can take another question or comment. Hello, good evening.
Good evening, madam.
I'm great, thank you. Who am I speaking to?
You are talking to Mbozi Maxofen.
Sorry, Mbozi?
Mbozi Maxofa, yes.
Okay, please go ahead with your question or your comment.
Yeah, I just want to ask you from the minister. I heard about him speaking about the city kids.
Yes.
Over the new, I don't know if it's the new political, what is this, which they have just introduced last week. Manifesto, manifesto.
Yes, the manifesto.
Yes, he talked about what when he said the city kids should be found on the street. But what I've come to discover that there are sometimes I saw some buses which are fixed those street kids on the road and take them somewhere to eat and bring them back. So my question is this not encouraging them to come on the street or what? That's my question.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Honorable Minister, Kaluba was asking where do the politicians get the money from to give people who are asking for alms?
Good question. Kaluba, to be honest with you, those politicians who give out money, they don't give out substantial amounts of money. They go on the streets with 20 kwacha, 50 kwacha, and they give out. So it's not money that really will change anyone's life. Had it been money that changes people's lives, then you'd start to question. So it's just little alms, token. This is tokenism. So I agree with you entirely. The tendency has to stop. But has to stop, first of all, unlike what my friend, Minister of Presidential Affairs said, stop begging, then we'll stop giving. I think it ought to start with those who are expected to give. If those who are expected to give say, we don't have, then no one will ask. But if they give, even if it's 10 kwacha, can you imagine somebody standing at the traffic lights at Manda Hill and targeting members of parliament coming from the motel going to parliament, and every politician lowers their window and they give out 2 kwacha to one person, and 150 of them pass through, and they give that one particular person, he has 300 kwacha. What will stop them from coming back tomorrow? They'll come back.
Okay, that's in reference to, like, the example you gave here at Long Acres.
Exactly.
But what about the politicians we've seen going to these meetings, especially when they said they were on mobilization duties, giving out huge sums of money, not the 20 kwachas?
Yeah, that is not the kind of money I'm talking about. I'm talking now about alms, giving alms. Those who go out and they say, I've come here, Kabwata Market, and as your member of parliament, I'm giving you 300,000 kwacha. Yes, I also question, where is this money coming from? And the other question I ask, is this what has become my responsibility as member of parliament? To go and borrow for the sake of making myself popular, to give to marketeers, give them alms, give marketeers loans, actually not even loans, free money. I have done some work in Kabwata constituency, and if you go to Kabwata constituency, there is no church that I'm not supported. There's no market that I'm not supported. But when I do it consciously. If you go to Kamulanga, for instance, I built a market shed there. And if you asked me where I got the money from, I would demonstrate where I got it from, because I built it over a period of time.
So, but they're spoiling the reputation of the party. Why is the party not doing anything about it?
It's not that the party is not doing anything about it. The party is speaking to these people and explaining to them that we have to be conscious with what we're doing.
I know the party is not an investigative wing, but I'm sure the party is also wondering where they're getting the money from.
And the party has spoken. His Excellency has been on record. He has said several times, please, don't you go. Actually, in one meeting he said, and I hope I'll not be punished for saying this, but in one meeting he said, I don't expect members of my party to be going out like madmen, throwing money after people. Those were his words. So he himself is concerned about this. And those who are giving money, I'm sure that if you ask them, they would explain where they're getting the money from. They will explain. And people give money for different reasons. You know, there are people who, I've heard some of my colleagues saying they have managed to get a loan and this and that because they want to endear themselves to the constituency. They get the money, a loan, they go and build a clinic using their own money. Fine. If they can explain where it's from, perfect.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay,
That's
so
not a problem. But my problem, my personal problem, is the issue of alms.
All right.
If you go to Kabwata now, I built a foundation. In Kabwata, I built a skills training center. Instead of me giving money to street kids, I kept that money and I said, I'm better off building something that will be a legacy, through which many people will benefit. And I put up a skills training center. I find value in that. I find value in going to a musician and saying, I'll assist you to record this music. And I do it quietly, rather than going on the street and dishing money to people on the street.
We have another caller before you answer the street kids question. Hello, good evening.
Good evening, madam.
Yes, who am I speaking to?
Mr. Ntele on the right.
Sorry?
Mr. Ntele.
Okay, please go ahead with your question.
Good evening, Honorable Minister.
Good evening, sir.
Let me just clap my hands over what you have decided to give chance to other people. That's very good. Let's hope we want to retain. I'm sure each minister can aspire, each minister president is allowed. Now, my question is about catalysm, Honorable, especially the catalysm. People are not free. Like yesterday, one of the guys was killed, especially these guys who are just standing on the buses. So please don't give them 1 quarter, they'll just come in. And you find that if you go to each bus terminals, all these bus stations, people have been crying that no, cadres are giving problems all over. Now, being the honorable, I don't know what you can advise some of these people. They are asking me, I like PF. I stay in Zingarume. Honorable, if you can come to Matero, I'm telling you that the previous MP, I'm not trying to criticize, they have done nothing, they have done nothing like this in Matero. The top of Zingarume Road is really bad. Now, Honorable, last question, what I wanted to ask you, what is your future in the PF? Are you going to just stay there? What is your future over these things? Good evening.
Thanks very much. So, Honorable, you can first answer Mbozi's question about the street kids, And then the last gentleman on caderism, and what are your future plans?
Mbozi, it is true. I know of a number of civil society organizations that are running programs that are aiming at empowering street kids. I know that they go out on the street and pick the children, go and give them food and bring them back to the streets. This is because they don't have anywhere to take them. And they feel for the children. So they think that rather than keep these children on the street hungry, let's give them some kind of support. Let's give them food. Obviously, that is a very temporary solution. That's not the end of this story. Now, your government, as you are well aware, already started the process of taking these children off the streets and taking them to skills training centers run by the Zambia National Service, so that the children can be equipped with skills, so that after they get the skills, they can then be reintegrated in society. What we are doing in the Patriotic Front Manifesto for 2021-2026 is to strengthen the skills training centers so that we can mop the streets of all the children. Let's take all of them to these safe homes where the young ones can be brought up by foster parents and be raised in kind of families so they can have family values. Those who are mature enough, let them go to skills training centers run by Zambia National Service. Those who have the capacity and the ability, let them be sponsored by the state to go back to school so they also can get some academic qualifications so that we get rid of the children off the streets. The Children's Code is coming very soon. And the Children's Code will also provide sanctions against parents who let their children stay on the streets. Because, truth be told, there is not a single child in Zambia who has no family. There is none. All those children have family. The trouble is that our extended family system has been allowed to disintegrate. And unfortunately, parents and families have become so preoccupied with themselves that they don't want to take care of children of their siblings, children of their relatives. Now, we want to come up with provisions that whoever neglects a child and makes the child abscond being a member of the family and they decide to go and live on the street, they must be cancelled.
Okay.
That's how we want to handle the matter.
All right.
Because you know, the children we have now on the streets, 30 years ago, the children who came on the streets came from homes. Now, unfortunately for Zambia, most of the children on the streets were born on the street. There are children who don't know home. Their homes are dungeons. Now, can you imagine what will happen in the next 20 years if you don't arrest this now? You'll have an explosion of hooliganism.
Okay.
And those children are being radicalized. And they're being radicalized against who? Not against anyone else but themselves and society. We have to avert this. And the Patriotic Front is the only party that has come up with a workable program to make sure that we avert this crisis. And this we're determined to do.
Okay.
This is also the reason why we in the Patriotic Front are saying no more alms giving. Please don't give these children alms. If you have money to give to these children as alms, please go and give this money to training centers so that these children can go and receive your money at those training centers where they can receive parental guidance, family guidance, so they become human beings like any other child in society. We must feel for those children, and those who go out there and give them tokens, they give them 2 kwacha, 3 kwacha, 10 kwacha. They must not think that they are assisting them. They are not. They are destroying those children. Rather, let's make sure that we support the government program where the children are taken into safe homes, they're taken into skills training centers.
Okay, Honorable. We are running out of time. Let's handle the one on caderism.
Tele, what is your future?
No, caderism first.
Yeah, the other ones were just comments, I suppose. Now let me answer the question: what is your future in the Patriotic Front? I've been a member of the Patriotic Front for a very, very long time, and there's no thought in me of leaving the Patriotic Front. I don't think that there will come a time when I say I'm retiring from politics. Because when people say I'm retiring from politics, then they are not being sincere. Every human being is a political being. And especially one who has been in politics for as long as I have been. It's not possible for me to say, I now cease to be a politician. I now cease to be, it's the same as saying I cease to be alive. I shall continue to be a political animal, and I choose to be a political animal participating in politics in the party that is called the Patriotic Front. So my friend Ntele, my future in the Patriotic Front is that I will continue to be a loyal member of the Patriotic Front. I don't have to be a councillor. I don't have to be a member of parliament for me to be an active member of the Patriotic Front. I will continue to serve, and I'm very fortunate that at the recently held conference, I was re-elected as member of the Central Committee. So for the next 5 years, I shall serve in the portfolio as member of the Central Committee. If His Excellency, who is given the mandate by the Constitution to appoint chairpersons of committees, chooses me to lead any particular committee, I'll only be honored and humbled to do so. If he doesn't, I shall continue with humility and with joy to serve the party as an ordinary member of the Central Committee.
All right. Okay, so just before we leave, just let the cat out of the bag. You unveiled candidates for Western Province last week. When do we expect some more announcements?
We should have had the second Central Committee meeting to adopt candidates last week. But as you are all aware, His Excellency's program was very congested. He had to be in DRC and so on. Because of that, we didn't have the meeting. We're having the next Central Committee meeting, I believe, this weekend. And then we shall be looking at candidates from, I believe, Northwestern, Southern Province, Central Province, and we'll roll on until we finish with Lusaka Province.
Okay.
So watch the space. Very soon we'll be announcing the winning team.
All right.
The PF winning team, the team that will form the next government together with Edgar Chagwa after August 12th.
Honourable Minister of Justice, incumbent Member of Parliament for Kabwata constituency, and Member of PF Central Committee, Honourable Given Lubinda. It's been a pleasure having you on Beyond the Headlines.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you for having this program. Please continue to bring politicians to come and give their perspectives on these matters, and indeed invite my young man, Cornelius Mwetwa, and come and ask him which one member of parliament was I talking about who has only spoken once in the last 5 years. He'll come and tell you if he has the courage. He might also be a coward like me not to mention it.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Why does it matter? What's important? How do we put it all into context? Join Kwanguliwewe every Wednesday evening between 18:30 and 19:30 hours as she goes beyond the headlines, giving you the full picture and deeper insights into issues that shape our lives. Beyond the headlines, only on Hot FM, #1 for news and entertainment.